Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
But we're going to kind of first go through some of the questions. The very first question, which was very disappointing to me, is the question of add-ons. And Steven has always had a blank no response to that. I'm disappointed in that.
Why?
I'm not disappointed that they don't have any UI add-ons if they intend to provide, as they were saying, a fairly robust suite of UI modifications that you can apply as you want to get a lot of the similar sort of information. And that's definitely one of those things that's going to be based on the feedback they get.
Yeah, has he ever said exactly why? Like what the concern is? Just that things get automated, or I'm just curious. You know, so I've never seen that in an interview. Really, just that he didn't like them. So
I don't know that he's specifically said why, but I can definitely think of reasons why you wouldn't want it for, security, for not having automation cause a bunch of extra data to have to get pulled from the server constantly and refreshed, and having the ability to
more difficult.
Right? pressing one button that targets my target's target or whatever it is. So I could definitely see something where they'll add stuff based on the feedback we give, but they'll probably push back to a point, and that point is the stuff that they specifically don't want players to be able to have access to begin with. I don't think they will disallow DPS and progress UI stuff. It's probably going to be a little bit of a battle, both players arguing with each other as well as perhaps even internally with the team about who's for or against it and such. But ultimately, I would imagine with enough effort, people would be able to get like DPS meters and all that sort of stuff put in if they really wanted.
I hope not.
I'm someone who obviously likes data, and disappointed when I'm not going to have access to that. I had done a map project for a previous game. That was something that would be fun here, but if you don't have access to any API, you don't have access. So it becomes a little bit more difficult in how to do that, but there are ways around it.
Figure out a way, yeah.
Then you just become much more have to rely much more on players, right? But which is fine. But anyways, I guess I could see the early days of World of Warcraft and the sort of heal bots that you have. Literally just whether you right click, center click, left click on the nameplates, they would get healed. Direct heal over time. Definitely made it probably too easy, but.
DPS meters are a common thread topic in the forums. They were talking about that, 6 or 7 months ago? I haven't been on the forums for most of the year. And I went back today and they're still talking about that again, and it's really the same people, 2 or 3 people saying the same thing they said 7 months ago. But for DPS meters, I'm hoping we can stay as far away from that as possible, because my experience is that party and raid leaders use that to dictate to other people how they must play. When I was playing Neverwinter Online, I joined a party with a streamer that I'd been following, and I was playing an ice wizard, and I'd got to max level and was hanging out with them for a dungeon crawl, and they stopped and said, "Why aren't you using repel spells in this dungeon? That's much more efficient than ice I'm like, because I'm an ice wizard. Like, but your DPS will be better for us if you use repel. But I'm an ice wizard, so no. People need to get, it's an RPG. We need to get around just the meta of it. Find other ways to defeat the it doesn't have to be as efficient as possible.
But it was a bad RPG.
I'm just saying, it's what we're playing as an RPG, so
yeah, no, I'm saying that example you give is great, because I'll go back to D&D. If you're making an ice wizard, you're probably going to roll an evocation wizard and pick up every single ice spell that you can along the way. Level 4, you're probably going to take the feat that gives you better vulnerability penetration for your ice spells. But that's because D&D actually is set up for you to have a limit. It isn't, here's your entire, well, maybe it is for clerics and some other casters, but for like a wizard, it isn't, here's your entire toolbox. You have access to all of these at all times, but you're only going to use 6 to 8 of them. It's more like, you take the things that you need and you specialize for what you need, for what you think is going to be the situation between now and the next time you get to take a big, long sleep. So, it's different implications than something like an MMO, where if you have 8 abilities on your hotbar that are different elements from the different things that your wizard could know, but you focus on ice spells, that, everyone's going to complain, because in role-playing a character, you are like, leaps and bounds far away from what is considered efficient gameplay, and, potentially even the gameplay you're designed to play with to complete that dungeon to begin with.
Well, to complete it efficiently. Which I don't care about, because I'm role-playing. It's a role-playing game. But
then there's also back spawns. You have to move at a certain pace, otherwise things will pop up behind you.
When I'm playing, when I get to a place where I can solo that or duo that, I don't have problems with that. I find ways to make it work, and it might take me a few runs to figure out how I'm going to do it, but I've never had a problem figuring out how to defeat a dungeon once I'm able to go through it.
Fair enough.
It's not efficient, but I don't care about efficiency. I care about playing my role. And one of the nice things, and I'm hoping we'll get more of this with Ashes, and they mentioned it, I think maybe this stream or the previous one, or we talked about adding a bleed. If you add a bleed, there will be augments that other players have and abilities that other players have that can feed off of that. Or if I'm an ice wizard, what abilities or skills or augments does Neuro have to take advantage of something that's under an ice spell?
Well, and that's also within your own character makeup, right? I think I read the example was your weapon skill could include a bleed, and then your active skill could include a backstab that also has some percentage damage increase if it was a bleed applied, and that way you start to mix.
Yeah, but that's everyone. It's not just individually, but that way your party can be like, oh, we know Diggs likes to use ice spells, so we're gonna bring stuff with us that can take advantage of that, versus, oh, you must spec to fire because fire has the most DPS.
Well, and I had commented on this not Friday, but the last Sunday show, that I would love to see a scenario where we get to where AI sort of changes based off the group makeup, rather than you planning ahead of time on what the encounter will be. The encounter sort of changes based off what you have, because that helps, maybe not entirely, but that helps solve some of that, right? Because then, if someone might not yell at you at being an ice mage, because the encounter will automatically somehow change because of the fact that you're an ice mage. I obviously wouldn't still get around all of it necessarily, but I wish one day that could happen. One day.
I would say, in terms of a DPS meter being the be all and end all for damage output, it's going to be a very, very, very poor way to actually judge who's actually putting out the highest damage, for 2 reasons that I'm hoping will be proven true during gameplay. One is that it's not an auto attack game. You aren't standing toe to toe with something and mashing a hotbar looking at a meter to make sure that you're, straddling the minimum DPS threshold without going over your main tank's aggro. That's boring. That's not this game. So that's one of the things that will be really confounding. You have to move to your target. You have to move from your target. You have to change targets. And then the other is the fact that it's not an instant direct damage single target game. Every spell and shot isn't magic missile. Every attack doesn't hit one target. You're going to be hitting a lot of things at once, and depending on how the aggro changes and how things cluster around, how you move into the clusters and taunt them, it's going to change the dynamic of how many things you're hitting at once. And it might be that you're hitting half as hard as the hardest hitting person in the group, but because you're able to get into a cluster and hit 5 things at once constantly, you're able to generate way more total damage. You're not killing the things faster. You're still going to need your buddies to help kind of pick off the things as you're weakening them, but it's something where now the fact that you're spec to get in a group and hit more things for less damage is doing more damage than your other character in the party who just deals a ton of damage, but mostly to a single short range target. They're your boss killer, but they're not your mob smasher. They're not your dude that's taking care of all the ads for you. And I think a lot of that's the stuff that's going to really confound using like DPS meters and stuff like that. What it's going to come down to more than anything, I think, is almost more like the way that they rate StarCraft players, where it's actions per second. How many different things are you looking at and taking account of and acting on and interacting on with? And
again, I'm hoping it's not about seconds, because that's so meta. Like,
right. Well, what I was going to say is that I don't think the timing is actually going to be that fast and precise that you need it. But go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to
reiterate. I already said it. I'd prefer people to be focused on, hey, is he taking advantage of that ice spell? Is he taking advantage of the bleed? Is she taking advantage of the fact that person is rooted? There's people doing stuff, and I really got that from I think it wasn't Sword Art Online. It was the other one that I'm forgetting the name of. I think where it's an anime that's based on being stuck in an mmorpg. Where that was the thing. The rookie group came in to a dungeon to fight, and each person was acting like an individual. This is the way I normally fight solo. And the leader looked around and said, okay, so we have to ask the question, why do you like to use that spell? I notice you always lead with this, and because of this reason. And then everybody goes, oh, okay, so if you're going to do that, we're going to do this. And I wish we had more conversations like that than why aren't you using your highest DPS? Because I'd rather not everybody be cookie cutter. I'd rather. But I also saw on the forums today, I hate chaos. Nobody wants chaos in their games. We want, and I think it was in the DPS, we want to be able to use the DPS in order to know how people should fight and all this. And I'm like, I'm chaotic good. I want chaos, and pretty much as much chaos as you can get. So I would rather have a lot of diversity in our party and adjust to that rather than everybody being cookie cutter and there being very little diversity.
I want an enemy to have a mesmerize spell that causes all of your meters to just go completely out of whack.
Nice.